Hey everybody, Ben here for the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to the Gnome Team Guide. Gnomes are a brand new team for Blood Bowl with brand new positionals, brand new players, brand new skills, and a brand new way to play this game that we all love. And we're going to start right here with our team guide. We're going to cover what builds up the team, what the special skills are, what the positionals do, how you kind of want to develop them, and what accessories you will need to run the team. Now, we will obviously also be doing all the usual videos that we do, the team video, the roster video, the star player spotlights. They'll be going up today and tomorrow on our Patreon and our members on YouTube. So if you want access to them within the next couple of hours, then you'll get them there. Otherwise, they'll come out over the next few days on standard YouTube. But this video is about what the heck is the Gnome team, what are their special rules, what players do I need to look out for, and what star players can they take. So let's dive in to the brand new team for Blood Bowl. So the Gnome team, we'll start right at the beginning before we even look at the players. The team itself, 0 to 8 rerolls, 50k. This is an absolute bargain. They're rated as a tier 3 team. They do have access to an apothecary. Special rules wise, they've got Halfling Thimble Cup only, no Old World, Classic, none of that stuff, just the Halfling Thimble Cup stars. Now we'll touch on that at the end of the video so you can see the big list of stars. It incorporates basically everything they're going to need. A little bit of a shame, we were kind of hoping they'd have the Elven Kingdom rules, but quite frankly, you've got enough muscle in the selection that doesn't even matter. The only thing to call out here is that even though they have the Halfling Thimble Cup rule, they do not get cheap Halfling Master Chefs. But that's okay, because, as I was saying, their rerolls are 50k a pop. And we're about to look at the pieces that build up this team. They're not the cheapest team. They're not the most expensive. You are going to be able to afford 4, maybe even 5 rerolls to start a league at 1 million. If you're running this team in a tournament, I mean, you can go and look at our tournament roster video, and you are going to be able to take plenty of rerolls. Now, because of the way the positionals work, because of the way their players work with the lack of dodge, you kind of want them because it's going to keep them feeling fast. Without rerolls, it's a bit risky. They've got some very good integral skills to keep them alive, but they feel quite slow. So having access to team rerolls so that they can use their stunty to their advantage and still take those 3+ dodges is very important. So no Halfling Master Chef, but 50k rerolls means that this team is very easy to build. And you build it using these pieces here. So the Gnome roster. We have got, I've lost my mouse, there we go. We have got 0 to 16 line gnomes. Now, for those of you who've been following the channel, you'll kind of know that these guys are halfling stats, and the line gnome is where it starts. No dodge, okay? They're a halfling, same halfling stats, but they don't have dodge. They've still got right stuff. The positionals don't, but the line gnomes have right stuff. But everybody that is a gnome gets wrestle and jump up. Rump up is a superb combination. So the line gnomes and the Beastmasters and the Illusionists, they don't have the integral defense of that dodge skill, but they have the wrestle skill instead. So if someone both downs, if you've got a dwarf blocker taking a hit at you, you just wrestle them to the ground. If you are attacking with a line gnome, and I wholeheartedly suggest a cheeky blitz into a cage every now and again, 2 dice up with wrestle is a fantastic thing to pull off. You pull that guy down with the ball, it's not a turnover, but the ball is loose, the ball is free and ready for a Woodland Fox to swoop in. Now, you get 0 to 16 of those gnomes. It's an interesting roster. I don't think you're going to need too many gnomes most of the time. If you're playing League, you might need a couple to be journeymen, but generally speaking, 5, 6 gnomes is enough. The box set for this team is absolutely brilliant. You get all your positionals and I think 8 gnomes, which is more than enough gnomes that you're going to be needing for this roster. Generally speaking, unless you kind of opt to go without the positionals, but the positionals are so cheap compared to the linemen and they are so useful that I can't advise, if you're going to do that, just run halflings. But gnomes are fun. So 0 to 16 of those line gnomes. Then you've got 0 to 2 Beastmasters. Beastmasters are line gnomes with a little bit better armor. They don't have right stuff, so the trees can't throw them, but they come with guard. Guard is great. Fantastic skill. Fantastic skill for a stunty to have. They're Edge 3. The whole team's basically Edge 3 with the exception of Woodland Foxes. stunty dodging in is a 3+, basically regardless of tackle zones most of the time. They don't have dodge, as we've already discussed, but you've got a team reroll. You can put that guard player anywhere you really need them, and that is absolutely monstrous to go alongside the fact that actually just putting the Beastmaster next to any of your gnomes is probably going to give them a 1-die block. Putting them next to a Treemen, probably going to be a 3-die block, and that is gorgeous. Then you've got 0 to 2 Illusionists, or Tricksters as we call them, because they are line gnomes. They also don't have right stuff, but they come with a new skill. I think it's technically a trait, but it's a new skill called Trickster. Now we'll talk about that in a second, but think of it kind of like reverse sidestep. Then you've got 0 to 2 Woodland Foxes. These guys have been described by many people, or just me, as tiny ginger gutter runners. Movement 7, strength 2, edge 2+ with dodge. These guys can get everywhere because they're stunty, so it's 2+ forever with a fox. They do have a new skill as well called My Ball, which means they will never, ever give that ball to any other player unless that player decks them into the ground. So I was going to use if you've ever had a dog, if you've ever played with a dog and you've thrown the ball to the dog and the dog's come back to you and the ball just is not being given back, I think that is basically the skill on the Blood Bowl pitch. This team also comes with 2 Altern Forest Treemen. Those are the proper trees without loner, with timber. So the trees are there to be massive hitters. They can throw the line gnomes only, but paired with the Beastmasters, you're going to get a couple of very big strength 7 hits right off the bat. And the trees, even though they're kind of slow, they will do some serious damage. So each part of this roster has a really cool purpose. And I'll tell you what, we'll look at the new skills before we dive into that too much. And the first one is Trickster. So the Illusionists, or the Tricksters, have this skill. It's a little bit wordy, so we'll read it, then we'll kind of talk about it. So when this player is about to be hit by a block action or a special action that replaces a block action, except for ball and chain attacks, before determining how many dice are rolled, this model may be removed from the pitch and placed in another unoccupied square adjacent to the player performing the block action. The block action then takes place as normal. If the player using this trait is holding the ball and places themselves in the opposition end zone, the block action will still be fully resolved before any touchdown is scored. What that means is just before your opponent and you look at supports, just before you calculate the dice, your Trickster, if they're being targeted by the block action or the block part of a blitz action, just ends up in another square adjacent to the attacker. So that means this guy comes in and he's going to punch the Trickster, and the Trickster just goes on the other side. Now the block will resolve as normal, and generally speaking, even though you do have wrestle, the lack of dodge and the lack of strength more than 2 means that to begin with you really don't want your Tricksters to be hit very often. But if your Trickster has the ball and they get attacked, you can accidentally end up bamfing yourself a couple of squares closer to the end zone. And if you drop yourself into the goal line onto the end zone, the block still happens, but if you're still standing afterwards and you're still standing in the end zone, it is going to be a touchdown, which is wicked. There's a lot of best case scenario mentality in Trickster, but at some point it is just going to be brilliant. It causes your opponent to really have to think, because you are moving the target of the block. So if you can bamf him into a position where you've got more assists than them, or that they just simply don't have any assists against you, it is going to be fantastic. And for frenzy baiting, it is almost as good, if not better, than sidestep. And My Ball, I think, to be fair, I've succinctly covered this, but we'll go through it anyway. This is the Fox's special skill. A player with this trait may not willingly give up the ball when in possession of it, may not make pass actions, handoff actions, or use any other skill or trait that would allow them to relinquish possession of the ball. The only way they can lose possession of the ball is by being knocked down, placed prone, falling over, or by the effect of a skill, trait, or special rule of an opposing model, for example, strip ball. So basically, if the Fox gets the ball, there's no stretch play. The Fox is not going to give it back to you. The Fox has the ball until he trips over or someone punches him into the ground or he scores. Now, we'll talk about this as we go on, but looking at the stat line of the Fox, you may think, wow, I want to score as much as possible with the Fox. And you are going to be able to score a lot with the Fox. But Try not to give the fox the ball until it is the turn that he needs to score with it, or you're going to end up kind of robbing yourself of options. The Illusionist does great with the ball. You've got that Trickster ability that you can, even if you get splatted, you're 2 squares better off. You're 2 squares in a position where you would rather die. That's really useful. And the fox can always swoop in and grab it. But if you've got the fox or 2 foxes near a Trickster, there's always a pretty good chance of getting that ball to a fox, and the fox can run off and score. If the fox has got the ball and your opponent manages to pin the fox in or just tag your other threats, there's no stretch play. So my ball, it's a minor thing if you play around it, but sometimes it's going to be a bit of a fix. Now, before we delve into each of these positionals in detail with stats and costs and some skills that we kind of want to give them, one thing to mention is if you want to see some gnome games, go have a look. Monday night Blood Bowl, we've played a couple of gnome games already. One gnome game? Yeah, there's some games up on the channel where you can see gnomes being played, and there is no better way to understand how a team is played than playing it yourself. But second best is watching else give it a go. Okay, let's start the positionals and players. So gnome linemen are your bread and butter of this team. 0 to 16, movement 5, strength 2, edge 3+, passing 4+, armor 7+. You may think, that's exactly the same as a halfling. It is, but the way they play and the way that the way they play is just very different. Now, the reason for that is they are 40k, which is more expensive. They get access to agility, which is exactly the same as a halfling. Strength and general on a secondary, which is, I think, exactly the same as a halfling. And this is where it gets gnarly. So instead of dodge, they get jump up and wrestle. So they get jump up, right stuff, stunty, and wrestle as a core skill package. Right. This is where it begins. Halflings with dodge and stunty can go 3+ with a reroll basically anywhere. Not having that reroll, these guys can still travel around, they can still traverse the pitch, and they can still do it on a 3+. But not having that reroll just makes them feel really risky. So you will be using your team rerolls if you want your gnomes to move around. However, other than that, these players are fantastic. The fact that they've got jump up and wrestle, it is just such a wonderful combination. So wrestle, let's start with that skill. Basically, if your opponent blocks you or you block your opponent and a both down result is selected, a player with wrestle can go, right, we'll ignore that result and we'll both go prone instead. So if a dwarf or a Norseman or a blitzer hits your gnome lineman and goes, it's okay, I've got block because it's both down, they say, well, I'll choose the both down. You go, well, then I will wrestle you to the ground. Both the players go prone. If either of you have the ball, it pops out. If your opponent is blocking you and they've got the ball and you wrestle them to the ground, it is a turnover. If you are attacking them and you've got the ball and you end up taking wrestle and you both go to the ground, it's a turnover. Otherwise, it's not a turnover. You just go to the ground, no armor is rolled. They go to the ground, no armor is rolled. From that point, it just gets even better because you have jump up. So when it comes to your turn, when it comes back to that gnome lineman having the chance to get up again, it costs 0 squares to get up. So a dwarf blocker, a Norse lineman block you, you wrestle them, they are costing 3 squares to get up. A dwarf blocker dropping to the ground on wrestle with your gnome, he's getting up with 1 square. You are getting up with 5 squares, and that is just so fantastic. And the jump up skill allows you to block from prone, assuming you pass an agility test at +1. So if you've got a gnome on the ground and you want them to block, not blitz, it's a 2+. And you can still, and it just gives you that extra bit of chance. Now, that's not going to be happening a huge amount of time because your gnomes are strength 2. And if your gnome gets powed or pow starred, armor 7 is going to hurt. They don't stick around. So the best thing in the world for a gnome lineman is the dodge skill. And this is when it gets really, really, really wonderful. Let's assume the gnome linemen take agility, they take dodge, they get 6 SPP, and they take the dodge skill. They're now 60k. If a halfling wanted that, they'd have to go 30k, get jump up, which is a standard agility, 50k, and then take a 40k double to get wrestle, 90k. Your gnome lineman 60k at that point versus a halfling which would be pushing 90k. So the gnomes start off in such a good position, and if you're running these guys in a tournament or you're running them in league, getting some dodge in there is going to be great, but it is not ubiquitous. If the whole team gets dodge, you are cooking. They're stunty. In a league, you're not going to get access to long enough life to give all these guys the skills you want them to. So what's going to happen is a couple of your gnomes are going to get dodge. They're going to get a TD, and then they're going to randomly roll the MVP. Then they become mini blitzers because your dodge pieces are able to 3++ anywhere you want, take a blitz anywhere you want basically, and you've got the wrestle skill to pull your opponent down. 2 dice with wrestle is brilliant, even when your opponent is choosing, because anything other than a skull is good for you. Both down, pow, pow star. Fantastic combination against a ball carrier. All right, there's only a 25% chance that you're going to get those on both dice, but that's 1 in 4. Reroll it, that's almost 50% of the time a 2-die up blitz with wrestle is going to work, assuming they don't have skills. So, a lot of best case scenario mentality, but honestly, push it. Like, when one of these guys gets dodge, they become your ball sacking blitzer, and it is fantastic. Now, you can also take a random general on them, but I really wouldn't bother. It's just not worth it. Sure hands is fun, tackle's useful as well, you know, kick's always good, but nothing is as good as a dodging gnome lineman. On to the Gnome Beastmaster. This is the positional that has 2 awesome things. 1, an animal to stick on your base, and 2, the guard skill. So, 0 to 2 of them, movement 5, strength 2, edge 3+, passing 4+, armor 8+. So the same stat line as the gnome, just with a little bit more armor. Now, they come in a bit more expensive than the standard gnome lineman, 55k instead of 40k. Same skill access, agility on primary and general and strength on secondary, but boy howdy do they come with a pretty useful, right, okay, 15k more than a lineman. You get +1 armor and guard. Guard is a good skill. Guard is great. There you go. I'm not going to blow anyone's mind here, but guard is the skill that gives you an assist to all of your friends, regardless of whether you're marked or not, which is wonderful for blocking when you're choosing to block stuff. It's wonderful when you're choosing to, well, you don't choose to get blocked, but when you're being blocked against, and it's also very useful for fouling. So the Gnome Beastmaster is just wonderful in this team. You've got guard, jump up, stunty, wrestle. The only thing it can't do is it doesn't have right stuff. You don't want to throw these anyway. You want them standing and you want them near stuff. The things we've seen with the Gnome Beastmaster so far is they don't have dodge, but they do have stunty and edge 3+, which means they're dodging 3+ anywhere. If you've got team rerolls, these guys are very effective at being able to get exactly where you want a piece of guard to be. That's one thing. The second thing is, right off the bat, you can stick them next to a Treeman, and generally speaking, on most strength 3 targets, that's going to be a 3-die block. Now, your trees don't start with any combat skills, but they do start with Mighty Blow. So being able to just make them more effective is going to bring that Mighty Blow into play basically every turn, and that is a fantastic thing. So you've got a good bit there and a good bit there, and the other thing here is that this team is full of players with wrestle, and wrestle puts your opponent's players prone on the ground. And as anybody who's ever played with a war dancer or a gutter runner will know, there are some players that when they're prone, they're going to get kicked, and it's going to be a foul action, and guard gives you +1 to a foul as well. So the Beastmaster is going to want to help your trees deck stuff. It's going to want to sneak around and be in exactly the right place for you to make a really dodging, daring play on the ball carrier, and it's going to want to be in the thick of things, ready for you to make that foul action with an extra +1 as well. And you get 2 of them on your team for 15k more than the lineman. The Gnome Beastmaster is the most auto-include of any positional ever made. It is not going to win the game by itself, but it is the ultimate friend. This is just going to support your trees. It's going to support your normal dudes. It's going to support the foxes. It's going to support your suicide blitz with your wrestle gnomes. The Gnome Beastmaster is absolutely superb. And unsurprisingly, If you get a skill up on your Gnome Beastmaster, give them dodge, then maybe sidestep further down the line. But you want dodge on this guy as soon as possible. Wrestle's going to be good to keep him alive. Downside of guard is that you are going to be next to opposing players, and if a strength 2 piece starts next to an opposing player, there's a jolly good chance he's going to get a jolly good block against him. Wrestle's going to help a lot of the time, but dodge is just going to keep him standing and keep him alive. So as soon as you can get 6 SPP on this guy, or if you're running him in a tournament, dodge is going to be just so useful, because then you've got wrestle and dodge. They're looking for natural pals to take this piece down, and you've got 2 of them on the roster already. So the Gnome Beastmaster is just exquisite. Next up, we've got the Illusionist, or the Trickster. So 0 to 2 of these, and they have exactly the same stat line as the Gnome as well. 5 movement, 2 strength, edge 3+ passing, 3+, and armor 7+. So I kind of lied there. Their core stats are the same, but they do have +1 passing. Now, we'll come to why that is in a second. So 50k, 10k more than a standard Gnome lineman. They've got jump up and wrestle, they've got stunty, and they've got Trickster instead of right stuff. So again, you can't throw the Gnome Illusionist with a Treemen, but they give you so much more. Now they get agility and passing on a standard and general on a secondary or a double skill. So you may be looking at this stat line going, okay, cool, we've got passing 3+, and we've got passing as an accessible skill there. The primary skill, you can take agility or you can take passing. So you're immediately thinking, okay, do I want a passer? Do I want a thrower on my stunty team? That's not quite what we're doing with this positional. The Trickster skill just means you've got a couple of really good routes to take your Illusionist. Now, the Trickster skill is the one that allows you to appear on the other side of an opponent when they block you before you calculate maths. So bear in mind, you've got the Beastmasters on the pitch with a bit of guard, and you may be able to just reduce some additional assists. Now, most of the time it's not going to do anything at all. You're still going to be a 2-die block, but it will definitely save you from 3-die blocks sometimes. Think about it. Human Blitzer goes to hit you. He's got 2 assists. That's a 3-die block. You bamf to the other side. He's got 1 assist. It's now a 2-die block. So there's a huge survival element there. You've still got wrestle to fall back on, and if you do, you've still got jump up to get back. Straight out of the box, Trickster is a useful skill for that, and then sometimes it will help you score. Okay, it's not going to help you retain the ball, but you might end up still standing a couple of squares closer to the end zone. You may not be standing, but you have the ball and you end up a couple of squares better off on the bounce. That is fantastic. That's a great place to start. But when it comes to the Illusionists, in your team and what they're trying to do, that's vanilla. That's fine. They're just better gnomes. They're just better gnomes at that point. But you've got foxes who are very good. What's the best way to say this? Checkdowns, okay? Your reserve plan are your foxes. Your Illusionists should be your primary ball carriers for as long as you can. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, they got passing 3+, and they've got stunty. So if you've got a team reroll, they can dodge away. You've got 3+ in the bank. If you can't get to your target for a handoff, you've got passing 3+ for a 3+ quick pass as well. So they're just there to be Drew Brees. They fall back and they try and get the ball to where they need to be if they can't retain it themselves. That's the best way to play your Illusionist, because you've got outs in the foxes. But I'm going to say this a lot when it comes to these gnome players. As soon as the Illusionist gets dodge, it becomes so much more. You've got 2 on your roster. Now, we're kind of talking a little bit too deep here, but I want you to think about this when you're running them. Those players, if one of them gets dodge via league or via tournament, you know, we talked about being able to just 3++ somebody into a cage and take that 2-die up wrestle hit. This should be you should consider this to be one of them. And the reason for that is that Trickster ability. Think about it. You go in, you end up with push both down. Your opponent says, oh, just take the push then, and you push. And your Gnome Illusionist then ends up inside a cage. Your opponent's going to go, well, I might as well just take 3-die block on your Gnome Illusionist. But you're okay with that because you've got wrestle, and by this point you've got dodge. And this is the beautiful thing about this. The second level of Trickster is when they're in the fight, they're going to get a lot of punches. But that Trickster ability is going to be able to just pin down other players. There's no blocking away a Gnome Illusionist. If you ever played against Elven Union, sidestep is annoying. Snotlings are annoying because it's like, I'll try and block you and then sidestep and they're in the way somewhere else instead. The Gnome Illusionist is going to do that. They end up inside a cage. Your opponent cannot do anything about them except try and kill them. It's going to cost them activations, and this happens regardless as to whether you've got dodge or not. It's just a much better idea when they do have dodge because you can get them to where they want to be and they've got a better chance of not dying when they get there. But from a vanilla point of view, 2 Illusionists, one to be your primary ball carrier and one to be your primary ball sacker, because that Trickster skill is good on offense and defense. It's not going to keep you alive, it's just going to make the situation better, whether it goes bad or really bad. And that is just phenomenal. These are going to be the players that a lot of people don't bother putting on their team. And I think it is such a mistake. They're only 10k more, and I know you don't have right stuff. And I know that they can't be thrown, but the fact they've got better passing, they've got passing agility as primary skills, they're really good utility players. And I can understand dropping down to 1, but you want to develop them in league, and in tournaments you want to give both of them dodge anyway. In a league, giving one of these guys, I don't know, on the ball is just going to be wonderful as well. Now the reason for that is you've got the Trickster skill, you've got on the ball to be able to get you that extra squares when you're being kicked to, but also imagine the Gnome Illusionist with his annoying Trickster skill just being able to bounce 3 squares here, there and everywhere when your opponent throws. It's not going to come up very often, but the whole point here is one of these guys wants to be the ball carrier. Dodge is great for that. If they get hit, they can Trickster, maybe dodge is going to keep them alive. If it doesn't keep them alive, they go to the ground and the ball is in a slightly better position for you. They don't get to your ball carrier, you've got a great chance to just get that ball to where they want to be, and passing 3+ is just an extra way of doing it. So the Illusionist is not the be-all end-all of the team, it's just a really good player. It's not an auto win, but I do think it should be an auto include. Okay, so the Fox is going to score touchdowns. It's gonna happen, okay? What do you do with the SPP? So in League, the Fox doesn't do anything with SPP, okay? You don't have any primaries, so you wait until 12 to be able to take a double, and the best double there for the Woodland Fox, sure, you can get defensive, which will pair up with guard. I think that's pretty circumstantial. The best thing for the Fox is save the team value and save the SPP till 18 and then take a random stat. This is where it gets really entertaining and really fun. Basically, I believe the worst case scenario is that the Woodland Fox becomes movement 8. And then it just becomes a lot easier for the Woodland Fox to do its 2 roles of support and be reserve scorer. Magic. Or maybe you spike and you get better strength. That is just a fantastic situation. Now, it's a ton of TV, but a strength 3 Woodland Fox is pretty fun to do. I will say the dream here with the Woodland Fox is 2 upgrades, get them to movement 9, then take sprint. They've already got sidestep. This just becomes a 1-turn touchdown machine. You just have to hope that they don't die. And I guess my parting comment on the Fox is that with strength 2, with stunty and with armor 6, if your opponent does get a clean hit on them, it's not going to go well. Your Woodland Fox is probably not making it a whole season, so saving up SPP really is just the best way for you not to get your heart broken when you do finally get a movement 8 Fox and your opponent just ends it. And last but not least, we've got the Treemen. So 0 to 2 Treemen on the team, same stats as the Halfling Treemen. Movement 2, strength 6, which is not bad. Edge 5+, passing 5+, armor 11+, 120k a pop. You get strength on a primary and AGP on a secondary. Mighty blow +1, stand firm, strong arm, take root, throw teammate and timber. So 2 Treemen on this roster will form your front line. Movement 2 is very slow. The fact that they've got take root means that when you activate them, you have to roll a dice. If they're blocking, if they're moving, if they're thinking about going home and having dinner, you roll a dice. On a 1, they take root, which means for the rest of the drive, they can't move unless they got knocked prone. And you never really want a Treeman to be prone, because how many squares does it cost to stand up a player? 3. How many squares of movement do the trees have? 2, which means you've got to roll a 4+ to try and stand up a tree man. Now they've got the timber ability, which means that if you've got people supporting them, i.e., you know, the Beastmasters, then they get a bonus to standing up, which is fantastic, but you never ever want to be trying to stand up a tree man. So it's always quite challenging. But these guys give you 2 things on this team. The most obvious is the fact that they are strength 6. There's no loner here. As far as big guys go, they're slow, sure, but they are punching really, really good. You've got 2 guard pieces on this team and a whole bunch of stunty little people that can give you good assists. Your Treeman should be making some very good 3-die blocks. And that's when Mighty Blow comes in, because 120k is quite expensive. But if they can take out, stun, KO, casualty a few players a game, they're going to make back their team value, and it's just going to be absolutely beautiful. So the first thing you want to be considering is, I would like to punch things with my Treeman. The second thing is that combination of throw teammate and strong arm. They get +1 to throw right stuff. I don't believe from the games we've played already with gnomes that the throw teammate should be the primary strategy. Not for a 1-turn touchdown. Sometimes it's going to be there, and the fact you've got the Treeman there to pull it off is wonderful. What you can do very nicely, though, is just on defense, throw a gnome, a line gnome with jump up. Now, if they survive the ground, they're going to bounce up in your opponent's backfield. 5 squares of movement, stunty 3+, and wrestle. There is every chance you should be starting a defensive drive by throwing a gnome into the backfield, because they are just going to cause a threat that your opponent is going to have to take 2 or 3 players to guard against to take that gnome. And the gnome is probably going to die, but it's going to cause activations, and that allows your other Treeman to take a good hit. It allows your Beastmaster to get into a good position to be able to make some good blocks. Your Treeman have got 2 purposes: to kill stuff on their team and to kill stuff on your team by throwing them that way. Absolutely fantastic, really solid piece. The only call out I would say for the Treeman here is that where they get strength on primary here, they've already got strong arm, so that's already taken care of. There's all the good skills. Guard is good, Brawler's useful, Juggernaut is questionable, but what I would say is consider multi-block on this Treeman more than any other Treeman, because where you've got the guard players, you're going to have a good amount of strength, and that multi-block is going to be regularly putting off some nice 2-die or 2-die blocks, okay, with Mighty Blow. And if you get a multi-block Treeman supported by your guard pieces, well, then you just basically have an extra tree man, and the more Mighty Blow you can put on the opponent, the better. Now, it is definitely not always the right thing to do, but I think is a really cool combination that this team pulls off, I think, better than anyone else. So those are all the players on the gnome team. The line gnomes have several purposes. They're flexible. They are very flexible. Edge 3+ and stunty, they can go places. You'll need a team reroll though to keep them alive. Wrestle means they're going to stay alive on the ground, and it gives you an opportunity to sack the ball carrier. And because they've got jump up as well, if you wrestle down or if you throw one into the backfield, they're going to pop up with all 5 squares of movement. Great combo. Maybe consider a dirty player gnome every now and again, because you are going to be fouling with a line gnome as often as you can. Beastmaster, there to be decent guard support. Can't throw them, but you wouldn't want to, because they are going to be helping your Treeman get nice 3-die blocks. Your line gnomes get nice attacks where you really need to, and just going to be brilliant at helping put the boot in. The Illusionist should be your kind of mid-range runner player that is there to just be a nuisance on defense and be your primary ball carrier on offense. Doesn't matter if you don't want to take them and use a line gnome instead, but they're just better, so I would wholeheartedly recommend them. The Woodland Foxes are a long-range support piece on defense and a scoop and score piece as well. But when it comes to offense, you don't want them to be your primary ball carrier. You want them to be your check down option. Like, I can't get my gnome through, but my fox is in range. Okay, here we go. Fox YOLO time. Magic. And your Treemen are there to just try and delete the opposing team or to launch one of yours on defense. Gnomes do not do it all, but they do a ton, and it's a lot of fun. Okay, so that is it for the Gnome team guide. There's a ton to take in here. This is a super fun addition to Blood Bowl. It's very different, and there's a lot to learn, and it's been quite a while since you've been in this situation. Gnomes are a challenge. They are not an easy team to win with. They are an easy team to get killed, and they give you some really good options. You can run good Blood Bowl and do very, very well with gnomes. I would classify them kind of like vampires in that regard, where if you can manage them on the pitch, they are going to reward you. If you just throw in stunties at stuff, halflings will be more fun for you, I think. But the gnome team, it's got a great bunch of great players, and I am very much here for it. Anyway, let me know what I've missed, what else you're thinking about, and I'm going to go and delete this camera from the world. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood content. Happy gnoming! Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube Members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.